Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Fabian for Liberty. Welcome to all of you treasures of truth. Thanks for joining me. FabianForLiberty.com is my website. So Friday I had a great interview with Dave from X22 Report. If you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, I would recommend it. And we talked about all kinds of things. We talked about the collusion of central banks around the world. We talked about the situation in Syria with the Russians joining. And we talked about a lot of other economic things that are going on, stock markets, real estate markets. Today I want to talk about the Fed. I also want to talk about Syria. And first off, the last video I did, I think it was last Wednesday, maybe Tuesday. I mean, I'm not even going to pat myself on the back for this. This is so obvious. I mean, my contacts on Wall Street knew it was going to happen, And then they always come out with these polls that are like, oh, we polled 45 economists, and they're split on whether the Fed will raise interest rates. Well, again, it's like Groundhog's Day. They're not going to raise interest rates. In my opinion, they're going to keep fueling the multi-bubble economy. That is the only tool that is really left. It's just how much bigger do they want to make it? What I mean by that is, like I've said, a lot of people say, well, the Fed and central banks in general are out of weapons to combat deflation or combat a lack of real economic growth. I disagree with that. I think that what they can do is turn on the spigot even more, unleash more quantitative easing, more money manipulation, more 0% interest rate policies, all this stuff that they really haven't done yet. I mean, interest rates have been at zero since, I believe, 2006, maybe. They're not going to go up anytime soon, I believe, until the end of this current business cycle. So it's, it's still back to the normal insanity that we see from the Fed and that we see from the cheerleaders on Wall Street that believe it is a good idea for the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates at zero, even though on their own website at one point they had something that an extended 0% interest rate policy would lead to a third of the dollar, devaluation of the dollar by a third. So that is insanity. Here's some more insanity for you. I was thinking about the debates that took place, the presidential debates, and how confrontational every Republican candidate is towards Russia and Iran. And it's interesting because, the trend we're in now is that Russia and Iran are forming, with China and with several other countries in the East, a new Eastern superbloc power. It is something that is the trend. The West is becoming weaker. Now, I'm not saying that can't be reversed, but clearly Putin in Syria now defying the U.S.'s orders to stay out of the ongoing civil war, if you even want to call it that. Basically, he doesn't listen to the West anymore. He doesn't care. This is after they've already tried to cripple the ruble. They've tried everything. Iran doesn't care either. Both of them recognize that the West is fundamentally weak. Not just militarily. I think the United States still clearly has the strongest military in the world, but where it really matters, economically, they get it. They realize what's going on. And so I'm not saying, I don't believe Putin's going to Syria to engage in World War III. I don't think he wants war with the U.S. I don't think any of the countries in the East want war with the U.S. I don't think they're ready for that. What they are ready for, though, is a seat at the table. Putin now going into Syria allows him to have a direct influence on what ends up happening in Syria, how this conflict ultimately ends, if it really ever ends. So it's interesting to see that, the West is it's like no one cares anymore. And I think Putin is necessarily right when he says that it's no longer a unipolar world where Washington, D.C. dictates terms to everyone else. So this is where things get really dangerous, though, because although I think the East doesn't want war, we know that the business of America particularly has become war. I believe that, it's my opinion, based on what I've seen, that the West was directly influenced in the Arab Spring that led to the destabilization of secular governments across the region. And when you take out these secular governments, they're replaced by radical Islamist groups like ISIL, ISIS, or Al-Qaeda. And I can't help believe that this is not what the West wants. That type of destabilization, so they have more control and influence over the region, particularly with oil, natural gas, other commodities that these countries have to offer. It is a sinister plan. This doesn't mean that the Iranians and Russia are all, Mr. Nice Guys. They're not. But what's so dangerous about this is when you have all these militaries working in a pretty limited space, all it takes is one foul move, whether it's whether it's done on purpose or not. It could easily be a false flag attack. It could easily be, jets colliding, drones colliding with jets, all number of things that could escalate this thing very, very rapidly. And again, when you sprinkle in the incompetence of leadership, it's a potential for utter disaster. So anyways, I want to hear what you have to say about the Syrian conflict, which is, again, on the front page of pretty much every major newspaper, and also the Fed's decision not to increase rates. I mean, I know it was expected, but what do you think is the end game for the Fed? What do you think is the end game for the U.S. economy? I will keep holding out. Last thing I want to say is I think we're coming up on the date, September 25th, where I believe it's either Jesus is coming back on the 25th or it's the announcement of the New World Order, or was it the dollar collapse? Any of those is not going to happen. I can tell you that much right now. That's why I did a video a couple of months ago saying I'll quit my YouTube channel if there's an establishment of a New World Order. Which actually you could argue has already been established, through backdoor channels, but I mean openly announced, or a new world currency openly announced. I disagree with both of those. I think that potentially they could happen in the future. Certainly not happen anytime this year. Love to hear your feedback on that as well. I'm Fabian Calvo, Treasures of Truth. Thanks for watching. I'm out.